Welcome to the Alex Salmond Show from Westminster, where we continue to discuss the political state of the 4 UK nations and look at the implications of the radically different electoral trends of all 4 of the UK's component nations. Last week, just as Dominic Cummings savaged the government's handling of the pandemic, we asked Baroness Claire Fox why the Tories still reign supreme in English politics. Rebel Scottish nationalist Angus Brendan McNeill MP used his first Westminster sojourn since lockdown to call for a more vigorous pursuit of the constitutional question following the SNP success in Scotland. Today, we turn to Wales and Northern Ireland. In the Principality, Labour scored a surprise victory in the local elections with only modest progress from Plaid Cymru. We asked Lord Wigley of Caernarfon, the most successful Plaid leader in history, why increased support for Welsh independence was not reflected at the polls. Meanwhile, turbulence continues in Northern Ireland politics, with both major unionist parties under new leadership and continuing unrest widely predicted as political and border uncertainty continues. We questioned Jim Shannon, MP for Strangford, whether trust and stability can be restored to the province. But first, to your tweets, messages and emails in response to our show last week. Anne says, it was made very clear that a vote for SNP was a vote for an independence referendum. Ruby says, independence has to be kept front and centre for Scotland's recovery. Patricia says, they'll never let us go. What can we do against all the dirty tricks they continue to throw at us? Teresa says, should be another great episode. Angus is a true patriot. And while I don't care so much for Claire Fox, she's got an interesting take on matters. And finally, Elizabeth says, I wish Angus Brendan was leader of the SNP. Now over to Alex, David Wigley and Jim Shannon.
Well, continuing our look at the divergent political paths of the 4 countries of the United Kingdom, I'm joined today by Jim Shannon, the MP for Strangford, and by Baron Wigley of Caernarfon, the former leader of Plaid Cymru. David Wigley, if I can turn to you first. In the run-up to the last month's elections, things looked set fair for Plaid Cymru, rising support for Welsh independence, but it wasn't delivered at the ballot box. Quite a disappointing result.
Well, yes, if indeed you can judge the question of independence just on the basis of this ballot. The First Minister of Wales, Mark Drakeford, quite cleverly put himself in a position that didn't totally distance himself from independence, making the point that if Scotland were to become independent, then the Welsh Labour Party would clearly have to revisit that question. And therefore, he did not appear to be anti-it, but did everything he could, understandably, to play to his own strengths, which was, in this circumstance, the way in which his government had handled the COVID issue. And as much as Plaid Cymru and Adam Price, the leader of Plaid Cymru, tried to make independence the main theme, quite clearly for most people, COVID was the dominating factor, and it was on that basis that they voted.
Jim Shannon, some considerable instability in the province following the Brexit, instability in the streets, but also instability in the Democratic Unionist Party, a leadership election, a narrow result, things not resolved as yet for the new leader. What's happening in the Democratic Unionist Party, Jim Shannon?
Well, we had an election for leader and an election for deputy leader. As you rightly say, the margin of difference was only 2, but being a Democrat and believing in the democratic process, I accept that thinking and I accept that decision. So it wouldn't be a secret that I had a preference for Jeffrey Donaldson, but at the same time I also expressed my confidence in Edmund Poots as the new leader. That decision has been made. I accept that. I accept the fact that we have the new deputy leader and Paula Bradley as well. So we've made a few changes. So the job for us now is to accept that decision, accept that democratic process, and to move forward together.
Well, let's look at some of the deeper issues at play here. The European issue first and foremost. David Wigley, you're virtually accusing Mark Drakeford, the Welsh Labour First Minister, of stealing Plaid's clothes. Is it a case also that Welsh Labour are having a rethink about their attitude to the national question following Brexit? Are Welsh Labour still friendlier towards Europe than, for example, their London counterparts are?
Oh, undoubtedly. The fact that we've had to leave the European Union following the Brexit vote, and sadly in Wales, of course, there was a majority for leaving the European Union. I think many of those now regret it. The farmers certainly do, and the fishermen and others who were very forward in the campaign. And as a result of that, the reality coming home, it makes it easier for Labour to maintain their position in Wales, that they were the pro-European party. Again, muzzling into Plaid's territory, because Plaid independence in Europe had been our objective. And the Labour Party appears to be independence curious and Euro friendly. And it'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
Jim Shannon, your new leader, Edwin Poots, accused the European Commission of treating Northern Ireland as a plaything this week. But surely it wasn't the European Commission who sold Northern Ireland down the river. It was Boris Johnson when he blatantly tore up the commitments he'd given the DUP.
Well, I think there's no doubt whatsoever that a commitment was given. I have to say, Alex, and you and I have had this discussion before. I perhaps wasn't just as confident in the words that he had indicated and his commitment to the union. I think the big thing for Boris was to get a Brexit deal done, and we unfortunately were the meat and the sandwich, if that's a way to put it, perhaps. So from our point of view, we are where we are today. The Northern Ireland Protocol is a disaster. It is not working. My party leader, Edwin Poots, said that very clearly in the Andrew Marr show there on Sunday past. I thought he was quite clear. The discussions we've had with Lord Prost, for instance, Lord Prost has already said in his words that he feels that the EU are an obstacle and a barrier to any future deal to make the Northern Ireland Protocol either do away with it or make it more acceptable, if that's the way to put it, or change it in a way that it doesn't impact upon the economy and the business between the UK mainland and Northern Ireland and vice versa. So we have clear issues, and the clear issues are, we believe, and I've said this to other Conservative MPs, I've made it very clear to the Minister of State and also the Secretary of State, I think Boris Johnson has the power with 81 seat majority to bring in an Article 16, do away with the Northern Ireland Protocol and move forward. Now, I think he's a power. I think he could do that if he so wished to do. There's been some indications from Conservative MPs on his side of the party, and probably those in the right wing of the party, that they would support that particular line of action. I certainly would, and I would like to see that happening. I think the main thing is that it's quite clear that the protocol isn't working. There's not a day goes by, Alex, honestly, not a day goes by that I don't have a business or an individual that complains about the Northern Ireland Protocol and getting goods from the UK mainland over to here and vice versa. And it just doesn't work. The economy has been affected by it. Jobs are there's a question mark over some jobs. There's a cost factor in it as well. Even the construction business in the last 3 to 4 weeks have indicated the problems that they're having with getting steel, wood and plastic piping. I mean, these things are unbelievable, and it's really unacceptable for the British government to let this uncertainty keep on going.
But I remember Jim Shannon, the Prime Minister, saying in one of his favourite phrases that Northern Ireland would end up with the best of both worlds, that you'd have preferential access to the European market, you'd have access to the UK market. I mean, once these teething troubles are over, don't you think that might be how it ends up?
Well, it's been a long time since my children were young, Alex, but the teething problems for my children didn't last as long as the Northern Ireland Protocol. And the problems are very, very real for us. 6 months into this process, or 5 months, and coming into 6 months now into this process, the Northern Ireland Protocol is just as difficult today as it was on the 1st of January. And for instance, why is it on the 31st of December of 2020 that for one example, horticultural goods, the soil was okay, and on the 1st of January, it's not? My goodness, work that one out if you can. Never mind all the other problems that are ongoing as well. I mean, this is somebody playing. I think my party leader referred to it, that EU see as a plaything. I think many of us feel that their anger at United Kingdom leaving the EU, that they're taking it out on us in Northern Ireland. And yeah, we see that very, very real. And we think it's time that Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister, stepped in and backed Lord Prost and make sure that we do the Article 16, do away with it, or move forward, because what's happening just cannot continue any longer.
David Wigley, isn't it a warning for Wales and what's happening in Northern Ireland, in the sense that I'm quite sure that many Welsh politicians and Plaid and the Labour Party would like the sort of access to the single market that Northern Ireland was promised, but it seems that this protocol has been a bit of a disaster. Wouldn't a Welsh protocol end up just as bad?
Well, that would depend clearly on the detail, and we're not in the same circumstances as Northern Ireland by 1,000 miles. It strikes me that the problems now facing Northern Ireland are implicit in the type of deal that we've got. But the question is, what sort of alternative can be brought forward? And it strikes me that in terms of Northern Ireland, if Northern Ireland is to stay in the United Kingdom and the Republic is to stay in the European Union, then there must be some greater free trade deal, that we must move on from trying to wind the clock back to the pre-Brexit days and look to some new future relationship between these islands with each other and with the European Union, looking to this sort of model that Norway has had, etc. Now, then I understand that for those who are hard Brexiteers, that may not be acceptable because we'd have to accept certain rules of the European Union. But that, of course, is what Northern Ireland is having to do now in order to have the access to the market. And the relationship between Northern Ireland and the rest of the United Kingdom would be that much easier if the rest of the United Kingdom also had that free trade agreement. Now, then, if that were to develop, it would mean that the movement towards independence in Scotland, and at some stage following that of Wales as well, would be in a context that doesn't need the rebuilding of barriers along Offa's Dyke or Hadrian's Wall. I mean, we don't want to move the clock back in that way. What we want is an independence to take our own decisions for ourselves and to cooperate with our neighbours on those matters that are common interest. And that must be the sort of model that is relevant to Northern Ireland, but I would also suggest relevant to the Republic as well. And there is an opportunity here as well as a difficulty, and it needs some people of vision in Northern Ireland, in Wales and Scotland, as well as England, to put that forward and fight for it.
Join us after the break when Alex continues his discussions with Jim Shannon and David Wigley. We'll see you then. Welcome back to the show, where Alex continues his discussions with Jim Shannon MP and Lord David Wigley.
Jim Shannon, there were no elections in Northern Ireland, which was perhaps unfortunate for the incumbents, because elsewhere in these islands, the incumbent government seemed to be rewarded. But nonetheless, the big issues in terms of the economy are still to come. The unwinding of furlough, the economy having to be taken off life support. As a parliamentarian, you must be identifying issues already coming up in your constituency where there are going to be huge social and economic pressures across these islands. Where do you see the cooperation between the political parties in getting the economy back on its feet?
The furlough scheme was incredibly helpful. I do believe that government, perhaps in the administration, the Northern Ireland Assembly administration in particular, and probably with the help of the Chancellor, need to ensure that as we move out of the lockdown and move forward, that they maybe access to furlough for some businesses can still be there in a smaller way. We may not need it, but at the same time, we've got to prepare for it. For businesses, one of the things that has come up with in my constituency, and I made this question to the Chancellor just the week before last, actually, and that was about those who have taken out bank loans. You know the way the government said it, that if you needed bank loans, and the government would help and assist. But some of the businesses have indicated to me that they're just a wee bit concerned that the repayment of some of those bank loans at big sums of money will not be achievable for small businesses who are just getting back to normal. So I have asked for some flexibility to be in that system to enable those businesses to be able to manage their repayments in a longer period. For instance, the last few days in my major town in Newton Ards here, lots of people about, businesses open again, people shopping and spending money, even the local construction business. I mentioned earlier on about the difficulties they're having with some of the supplies, but at the end of the day, they're busy. And I think that there's definitely going to be a lift off and a boost after it all, and that's happening now. People have money to spend. I think I read somewhere, I'm not sure how accurate it was, that people had an average of about £7,000 that they hadn't spent in the last year, so they have money to spend. I think that's good for the shops. I think it's good for the economy, but we want to make sure that it's long term, that there's a vision to it, that it goes beyond December of this year and goes into spring of next year. That's what we need to do. The economy is absolutely critical to retaining the jobs and moving forward.
Dav Wigley, there's been no more adept parliamentarian than yourself over the last generation in identifying the social and economic challenges and mobilising cross-party parliamentary opinion on them. Where do you see the big challenges coming and the big opportunities for opposition parliamentarians like yourself to make a mark to help your people?
Well, it's been fascinating, Alex, in the House of Lords over the last couple of years, and particularly since the Brexit deal went through, the way in which there's been some cross-party movement of peers who have links with Wales in the Labour Party, crossbenchers particularly, the Liberal Democrats. There aren't many Tories, but there appears to be a coming together in appreciation of the challenges that are facing the Welsh Government and the Welsh economy in general, and which haven't yet been tackled. For example, these come under 2 or 3 themes. One is with regards to agriculture and the way in which the independent agricultural policy of the Welsh Government can be pursued within a straitjacket that seems to be run from London. And I know that there are very strong tensions felt indeed by the NFU, for example, in Northern Ireland, as well as Scotland and Wales, with regard to the Australian deal that's coming up. That's one instance. There's a question of state aid, the extent to which the Welsh Government can help an industry such as the steel industry currently going through difficulties, and the danger that we won't have the latitude that we had to use funds from the European source as they were in the past. The new funding arranged by the Boris Johnson government is going to be manipulated from London and not in the hands of the Welsh Government. And then you have the spin-off of Brexit itself being felt in the last few days, even in the tourist economy in Wales, where some of the tourist hotspots that are now opening up mercifully after a very difficult period are finding it next to impossible to get labour, because they depended so much on people coming from the European Union to work for a season in the Welsh economy. They're not coming now. That's hitting not only tourism, but it's also hitting some of the care sector. And these issues are going to come home to roost. It'll be difficult sometimes to differentiate between the effect of Brexit and the effect of COVID, but the two coming together is most certainly going to be a major factor that people across party lines will be pressing in Westminster.
Jim Shannon, in terms of the issues that you've campaigned on, and people often have the impression that Northern Irish unionism has been very, very closely aligned with the Conservative Party, but many of the issues you've campaigned on have found you campaigning with the Labour Party and the SNP and Plaid Cymru. Do you see that continuing as you identify social and economic injustice that has to be tackled?
And my politics, Alex, left of centre, and no secret, would be where I would lie. I have a very deep social conscience. On many occasions, will vote along with my Gaelic cousins in Scotland and Wales on social and bread and butter issues. I mean, those are things that unite me with them, unite me with the Labour Party as well. On constitutional issues, I suppose, and probably sometimes in foreign issues as well, I would probably feel more at peace and more in alignment with the Conservative Party. But I'm not naturally a Conservative. It's not a secret. I might be one of only 2 in my my MP group who probably have the same opinion. My party let me have that freedom. Human rights issues are something that I speak out about all the time, and chair of the APPG and freedom of religious belief. I believe in speaking out for those with Christian faith, those with other faith, and those with no faith. And I do that regularly on behalf of ethnic groups and religious groups across the world. Where I see injustice, well, my heart aches. And I want to stand up for those people, and I will do that and continue to do that. So when we move forward, and I'm also my party spokesperson. When you're a small party, by the way, Alex, you never had that position. But in my case, as a small party, we have many portfolios. One of mine is DWP, so Department of Works and Pensions. So I do align with the requests of the Scots Nats Party and Plaid Cymru and the Labour Party in relation to universal credit and the retention of the £20 bonus that was, or extra money that were there during the COVID lockdown. So these are issues, and I see people every day who are struggling, and for me, that's what I've got to do. I've been privileged to be the member of Parliament. And my job is to speak up for those who have no voice, or those who have no one to speak for them. And I will align in many occasions alongside the SDLP in Northern Ireland, alongside Plaid Cymru, Lord Wigley was referring to, alongside your former party, Alex, Scots Nats, and you'll find us there speaking in unison in these matters.
Well, I remember, Jim, I led a small party before I led a large one, so I can reflect and remember exactly what it was like. The final question to you, Jim Shannon. Edwin Poots, does he now become First Minister, or is he thinking of some other arrangement? It's not altogether clear from us observing this evening. What's going to happen in Stormont? That's what we want to know from you, Jim Shannon.
Eben does not want to be the First Minister. There is some indication of others who may be in line for that. Mervyn Storey was the original person talked for the First Minister. I understand that Mervyn doesn't want to do it because of personal commitments he has. So it looks like it might be Paul Given. Other people have been given positions today, but the ministerial positions have not been filled. Eben will retain his position as Dara Minister, where he does some fantastic work, and I work alongside him in many things. So he will not be the First Minister. He will be the leader of the party, which is where, and he'll be the Dara Minister. So I'm afraid, Alex, you'll have to probably wait for a few days for those ministerial positions to be disclosed. I'm not in that circle of friends or the executive who make these decisions. But yes, it's slightly different. The leader of the party will not be the First Minister, not in this case anyway.
But there's no chance of you being summoned across the Irish Sea to take office unexpectedly then, Jim?
Absolutely not, Alex. I don't expect to have an urgent phone call from Eben to bring me home. I believe my role at Westminster is an important role. I've got that to play. I worked in the Assembly, as you know, for 12 years, and a local councillor for 26 years before that. But I think my role, and I believe honestly, my role as a Christian and as I believe the Lord wants me to be, is at Westminster. So I'll do my best there. And I'm sure Eben, he's told me he's very happy for me to be there, by the way. So I don't expect a phone call from him at all.
David Wigley, I mean, you were the most successful leader of Plaid Cymru in its history, outpolling, as I remember, that upstart SNP leader way back in 1999.
Who was he then?
But the paths have diverged since then, in the sense that the SNP have won 4 elections on the trot in the Scottish Parliament, and Plaid, haven't managed to make the big breakthrough again. Now, do you expect that realistically to change, or do you think there's more toil at the coalface before you get to that ambition?
Well, I have no doubt that it's going to change. The question is, in what direction will it change? But things may not happen in unison in Scotland and in Wales. One suspects that the British Empire and then the United Kingdom is unravelling in the order that it was brought together. The Republic went first of all in Ireland. Now Scotland is knocking on the door for independence. And Wales, which of course was united and incorporated by Westminster back in 1536, may be the last in the queue coming out of that.
Was that your first term of office, Dafford, back then?
No, it is something that is going to happen. In Wales, it is a different picture. And it's not only that some people in the Labour Party, there were Labour members standing in the recent election who were pro-independence. There are Liberal Democrats who have been making sympathetic noises to independence. And of course, what all this comes back to is, what does independence mean? And that's what's got to be spelt out more clearly in Scotland, no doubt, in order to win a referendum, but also in Wales. And I suspect that this is relevant to Northern Ireland. The type of relationship that we're working towards may not be the bogey that some people in Northern Ireland fear. It may be opening a door to a new relationship between the nations of these islands that will, in fact, find a sensible and a restful place for Northern Ireland and for the rest of Ireland, working together within these islands and also working together with the wider world.
David Wigley, Jim Shannon, whatever the future of the United Kingdom or Wales and Northern Ireland within it, there'll be strong voices like yours arguing for the best benefits of their people. Thank you so much for joining me on the Alex Salmond Show.
Thank you very much, Alex. Appreciate it.
As our independently minded guests have pointed out, the electorate are being extremely forgiving in awarding pass marks to the 4 UK administrations on the pandemic. No sooner had they said it than the spectre of Christmas past in the form of Dominic Cummings arrived at a Commons committee to disrupt the Prime Minister's wedding plans. Still, despite the battering at the hands of his erstwhile advisor, the Tories hang on to their opinion poll lead over the opposition Labour Party. This is quite astounding for a government party undergoing a difficult crisis. Our guests have all pointed to deeper forces at work, which will be the stuff of nightmares of the present ruling parties in each of the administrations. The Tory party in England may have more to fear from themselves than from the official opposition. Baroness Fox observes 2 Tory parties, not 1, and a destructive clash may be coming. Labour in Wales have defied the odds, but have they pulled it off? Partial at least by themselves donning the clothing of Welsh nationalism. They may not have yet let the genie out of the bottle, but the dragon could be warming up. Northern Irish Unionists regale against iniquities of the European Union, but it was their one-time ally Boris Johnson who sold them down the river on borders. And finally in Scotland, the SNP have won their 4th election on the spin, but are they really any closer to securing another referendum and their declared aim of independence? It would be difficult to have foreseen any more favourable circumstances than the current prevailing winds. And so, if not now, then when? Much, if not all, will be revealed in the coming year. And so for now, from Alex, myself and all at the show on this windy day, stay safe and we hope to see you again next week.